G'day, everybody. How's it going out there? This episode, I want to talk about a little bit something that occurred at Anthrocon that wasn't exactly positive, and typically, I don't cover dramatic things. I don't cover drama. I don't cover elements of things that are, you know, interpersonal issues and problems. Because if I were just have a channel covering interpersonal disputes, like there wouldn't be any time to cover anything else that views things overall as a fandom, like how fandom as an organization, how things are going, things of interest to furry fandoms as a whole. But something did occur at Anthrocon over the weekend that wasn't necessarily positive, but it's an important thing I think that needs to be discussed a little bit, and that is the issue of furry celebrities when they go amok a little bit, and have interconfliction issues and commit issues that if anyone else were to have done them, would have probably ended up with them having some sort of consequence other than shaming on social media. The incident in question covers a person that we've talked about here on this channel before, a person who got into a bit of controversy because they went to the Rosemont during the summertime instead of during the wintertime. And what happened was, during the summertime, there was a Russian group that was basically promoting Russian viewpoints and Russian propaganda. It was back in when the Ukrainian war first started, back in 2022, and there were what the people online call tankies, or people who are for the Russian military. And it's sort of a Russian military sort of propaganda thing. And apparently somebody was there named PepperCoyote, which is interesting because PepperCoyote is not a local to Chicago, so they went well out of their way to go to that particular gathering all the way in Chicago. And that controversy followed him around to the point where, because it was a Russian state propaganda sort of thing, a lot of furries complained about it, and a lot of furries, said that this person's politic might not necessarily jibe with what the fandom is, or and jibe with things, and that, and in order to defend himself, PepperCoyote said worse things online, and what ended up happening is that the convention started to distance themselves from him, basically, and then this whole save furry music element came up in that time during the the convention. They were doing PepperCoyote was doing protest playing, and they would use the hashtag save furry music, whereas I always get, and this is just a personal thing, injecting my own personal ideals here. Whenever someone says save America or save furry music or save XYZ, when it's not, furry music was fine. There were people playing there. There's people, there were performers performing at that year's Midwest Fur Fest, even though PepperCoyote wasn't. Furry music was doing fine. The sort of curtailing of the ideals, or claiming that you are the whole of the thing, basically causes me to go ugh. Whenever Donald Trump says America, whenever he says that, he's saying that in the royal we fashion. You know what I mean? He's basically saying he has a problem with it. It's America has a problem with it, when it's actually he himself, just the president, that has a problem with it. Those kind of things always throw me the wrong way, and it doesn't matter what, left or right or whatever. It just basically is a problem for me. So the issue here is that, going over that, he eventually kind of got back in. Eventually the controversy of the 2022 died down, and conventions started welcoming him back, and he started to become, start playing on the stage again. And, maybe he became a better person. Maybe he has, maybe he has left that sort of controversy, sort of like, you know, arrogance beside him, right? The issue is that at this particular convention, there was a furry comedian, and ironically, a furry comedian, who, called himself sort of anti-communist, and PepperCoyote is very much pro-communist. He calls himself a communist and things like that. So obviously, like, those two are going to get along like oil and water, right? And apparently, it came to a head at the beachfront of Anthrocon when PepperCoyote approached that particular comedian, and the comedian sort of recorded the confrontation. And PepperCoyote is clearly under a particular substance, and that has always been a large issue. That he hits the sauce a bit hard. Ironically, the world that I usually record this thing in is called Hard Therapy. I've revealed my secret. It is a VR world that is called Hard Therapy. It was like I was looking for a quote unquote news studio, and ironically, I found this world instead and decided that the colors matched up with what I wanted. It sort of had that style that I wanted. Interestingly, I'm talking about Russian things here. There's a lot of books here, and they have Russian text on them. And then also there's a lot of there's these little bottles around. There's it's not like all over the place, but it's a few of them. Apparently, they're big old liquor bottles. I featured them on one of the things before by knocking them over. But what has to be said is this pattern of behavior it just reminds me of another issue that happened back in 2017, where another sort of furry comedian, not a furry comedian in this case, but a different furry comedian kind of ended up, becoming a persona non grata. I'm coining that. Every time you say it, you have to pay me a royalty, and then I'll become a persona non grata. But a persona non grata, because he started to lean into sort of Trumpish kind of things, and ironically, PepperCoyote had his stint as well of flying pro-Trump things, and whether it was tongue in cheek or whatnot. Maybe they did it as a tongue-in-cheek thing, going oh, that guy doesn't stand a chance. I'm just going to do it for the lulz. And then the lulz didn't become so lully after all. No. Anyway, I don't drink. But it was funny, wasn't it? Anyway, so the issue here is that this seems to be a common occurrence where... whenever I think about alcohol, right, as something that I have kept my distance from, but, I understand that there's cultural drinking, there's definitely elements of drinking that is fine. It's supposed to alleviate the stress from the body in the right doses. And, people use it as a form of therapy. Not really, but sort of. But all I get is a weird taste in my mouth. The funny thing is, I've only been sloshed once, and that was at Furry Week in Atlanta when I went to, and this is my personal story, I guess, my only one encounter with the sauce. I went to a place, sort of a bar, hangout at that was down the street. I think it was called Ghibli's or something. It's right outside the main hotel in FWA, and I'm I've never had a Long Island iced tea before. I've heard things. And sure enough, I drank through one and I was I could feel sort of a weird this on the mouth. And I could tell my mouth was not working and functioning properly, which was kind of funny. But, those things are dangerous. Because they don't taste like alcohol at all. But one was definitely enough. It was an interesting experience. But that's the thing. Drugs in that sense, like drugs, particularly legal drugs, only talking legal drugs, can definitely like boost certain stats, but it also hinders others. But the other thing though is like gain a tolerance for it, and when you gain a tolerance for it, eventually the drug doesn't function entirely as good as it used to when it comes to certain things, because it can give you charisma and it can lower, but more importantly, it sort of lowers the sort of like self-consciousness. Like it takes that little self-doubt and self-consciousness in the back of your head and kind of like pushes it back. But sometimes self-consciousness is useful. You know what I mean? It's sometimes having a little bit of like, is this a good idea? Like having that hesitation. Hesitation can be an important part of a balanced brain. Because if you're hesitating, it means that there's something off and that you're not there yet. And you might not have the skill set to move forward with the conversation or with the thing, right? Like, you might not have the wherewithal to continue forward, right? And maybe that signal should be like, maybe you need to take a step back and get some more skills and like, work really hard at it. But sometimes, obviously, for different people, that can be too hindering, right? It's like you're always self-conscious. There's always a thing in the back of your head. And to those people, like, it might become very easy to get hooked on the sauce because that, shutting up that voice so that you can do anything in your life might, become very addicting. That being said, it's become, unfortunately, very common in furry spaces, that, particularly in the upper echelons of furry, because they're pushing themselves in ways that, they're on the stage, they're exposed, and they're part of a group that is seen as a persona non grata to particular political parties who, when if they were in power, they might use that power to go after people and be harmful to them. And so, like, to numb that sort of thing, like, you kind of sometimes people rely on special substances. That being said, it's like, I have seen a bit of an improvement in this new wave. Like, there's less alcohol, because first off, alcohol is really expensive and it's only getting more expensive. But a lot of the post-millennial folks, like, I hear that, like, they're killing the liquor industry because they're not drinking as much. And it's like, well, that's a good thing, isn't it? Especially since our population is, like, kind of going up, but not really all that much. So, like, having drinking go up that much means that everybody's drunk. And that's not good. So, like, to me, it's like, it's good to see that, like, there's more sober people starting to, take leadership responsibilities, starting to volunteer, and hopefully they'll continue to do so, because eventually, if you're too hooked on the sauce, well, the sauce gets hooked to you. So, and eventually it'll either drag you down with it, or you can free yourself of it, or you get control of it. Those are the three options. It's like you remove it from your life entirely, you get dragged down with it as it takes up more and more, you need it more and more, and you feel the need for it more and more, or you do learn to control it and, use it responsibly, which, if you have past addiction problems, it is very hard to do so. That pattern of behavior is very hard to break without probably full-on abstinence. A lot of furries. But just because one person's drunk doesn't necessarily, and luckily I think that, and this is something I've seen in the modern era more than ever, is that people are more likely to push that the person who is drunk is responsible for the behavior of their actions while they're drunk. Because I think the first thing that kind of started that was like, sort of the whole like, drunk, DUI kind of thing, where it's like, if you get behind the wheel of a car and you're drunk, then you are responsible, and you're responsible for getting behind the wheel inebriated, and you're responsible for, the fact that you are made a poor judgment call in that you're doing an activity that requires solid judgment to not harm others and yourself behind the wheel of a car. And so I think that sort of has bled over into other things, such as, yeah, that little like drunken spat that you got in with a guy at the river, and like followed him back to his hotel room chanting like, this guy is get this guy is awful, this guy is one awful, and it's like you're following him around, like, and even though he's trying to disengage with you, which is called harassment, by the way, which is in the book of a furry convention. And if it were anyone else who had this sort of told the staff, there would be consequences for it, for that sort of behavior, right? Whether it's a banning of the person or whatnot. And according to the recorder of the video, he has turned it into Anthrocon and has, said that, has made his case that, this person should be punished in some way because he's there for the convention. Clearly, he's PepperCoyote. He wouldn't be there for any other reason. And what will Anthrocon take action or not? I don't know at this point. Which is kind of the interesting thing about, like, we kind of keep telling ourselves that, we're better folks sometimes, but at other times it's like, it doesn't matter what ism you put on a society: capitalism, communism, oligarchism, theocracism, meritocracism, whatever. Doesn't matter. Like, there is the in group and the out group, and then there's the hierarchy of people, and who gets to follow the rules and who gets to break the rules and who gets to bend the rules. Like, there's definitely that thing about humanity. It doesn't matter if it's politics, doesn't matter if it's fandom, doesn't matter if it's furry, doesn't matter if it's like anime or football or whatever. Like, people who, there are people who quote unquote get away with things that normal people wouldn't get away with simply because of the tenure that they have. And I think that kind of like disappointment in those kind of societies can lead to people becoming very jaded and disenfranchised and just and frustrated, quite honestly. I mean, it's kind of the reason that I would hope that, PepperCoyote identifies himself as a communist, because he's dealt with he's dealt with American sort of egocentrism and exceptionalism and sort of behaviors that frustrate him all to hell, especially when it comes to healthcare and things like that, where it's people are, siphoning every dollar out of people and their time and making desperation so that they have to work all the time, and it's frustrating. And just trying to survive, and that era of frustration, it's maybe we should just try an entirely new system because the system's clearly not been working according to him. And that's the whole thing. It doesn't matter what label it is, right? I think if anything, if PepperCoyote is not punished for this and he does nothing and he just attends Anthrocon next year, it'll just prove the point. It doesn't matter what system is called. It doesn't matter what group it is. There's haves and there's have-nots, and there's law followers and there's law breakers, and the people who write the rules enforce the rules. And if the person who violates the rules is a buddy with the person who wrote the rules, then guess what? 6-7. Come see, come saw. I don't know. It's just, that's the frustrating part. And it's the reason why, when I do news coverage of things, it's more I write about if a rule gets enforced or not enforced, and it doesn't happen or does happen, I have to write about it. And the reason I have to make a video about it, and the reason I find myself having to do that is because I want people to know what the actual rules are. I want people to know what the actual standards are, and I had to do that a handful of times with Fur Affinity, right? The whole like there was a situation that occurred, and it only really occurred once, but once is enough, where a person was basically, made a comment in a comment section and said like, so it was like, and if you go back in my archive, you might find it, but it was basically Jason Apex did this whole like contest, and they were going to do a sort of flash. Like, there was like, hey, you can get a free flash from me. And if you just enter this thing or do this thing or follow me and do this thing, right? The whole like follow, post this thing, and you'll be entered into this contest for a free drawing for a free animation. Somebody won that free animation. And the animation they chose was non-pornographic, right? It was non-adult. And Jason Aphex was not, said no, basically. And he didn't put that stipulation on the thing out front, right, that it was supposed to be for an adult only. So he ended up going with somebody else. That person was frustrated and posted how frustrated it was that he was in that situation, but he never named his name, because naming names is the whole thing in for affinity. You don't name names. You don't quote unquote drama post, and you don't name names of people you're having issues with. That's the rule there, right? Does that help anything? Who knows? Well, people were just go outside of fur affinity to do it anyway. So lo and behold, though, somebody named his name, but it wasn't the poster. It was somebody in the comments section, right? Somebody in the comments section. Oh, you mean the Jason Aphex contest? And then basically everyone went after Jason Aphex because the name was revealed. And then Jason Aphex reported the journal, not the comment. He reported the journal. And the journal the journal and the person who was his contest winner ended up getting a week of suspension. So I had to write an article indicating that you are responsible for the comment section in your journals to make sure that they follow the rules. Otherwise, you, the journal writer, will get punished. Because that's what happened, right? So, in essence, like, even if Anthrocon doesn't punish the guy, and by the way, like, PepperCoyote did respond that in an apologetic manner, in the thread, which is linked in the description, that he was sorry that he behaved that way and it was disgusting and blah, blah, blah. Like, apologies are fine. Repentance is another thing. I really do hope that PepperCoyote does get it together. And by the way, I really hope that Griffin, like the other person who, as I was talking about in 2017, became infamous. Like, I hope that he also recovers from his alcoholism, even if he doesn't partake in the fandom anymore. I really do hope that he does recover as a person, and get over that crutch and get over that thing. And I do hope that also PepperCoyote does. You never wish this inebriation upon anyone. And I do hope that he does get help. But if he is truly apologetic and Anthrocon isn't willing to, like, basically suspend the guy for a year, maybe they suspend him in silence, doesn't matter. Maybe he himself should not consider, like, suspending himself for a year. Because we have to act as our own checks and balances at times, especially if people in leadership won't do it for you. This happened to me. In 2021, when I wrote about IMVU, Dragoneer buying back IMVU buying back Fur Affinity from IMVU. I made the implication that he had closed his convention because, he probably was trying to focus his finances to buy back Fur Affinity from IMVU. And, I got basically ear busted for that, especially for the way I presented it, because I was like, oh, I found this secret that no one else knows, even though I didn't have, like, solid evidence that was the case, even though, 6 years later, I'm more convinced than ever that, yes, he was very much, Dragoneer was definitely, financially stretched too thin, and that, buying back the site from IMVU is probably a big focus, because he wasn't sure what IMVU was going to do with it, so he definitely found an opportunity to sacrifice the convention. There's obviously other reasons he closed the convention. He lost a good friend during the COVID situation, and starting back a convention he was very frustrated about, being pressured to do that. and that was the public reason for that. But the way I did it was unethical, but no one else was calling me out on it in Flera, right? Whether it was Green Reaper, whether it was Cross Affliction, whether it was Rauken, whether it was anyone else there, no one else was going to call me out on the behavior, right? And it took me going to an outside person who is a very good volunteer, who I looked at from a distance. I wasn't friends with them, and I sort of latched onto it. And you can watch that whole video basically back in February, March of 2021, where I basically stopped writing articles for Flera for 6 months, as I didn't know it was going to be 6 months at the time, but I stopped until I read a sort of ethics in journalism from cover to cover, because I felt that was important, and because I had done something wrong. And that's what it takes sometimes, is that if you need to put, like, it's kind of a blessing a little bit that you get to choose your own punishment, because you can kind of determine what is a reasonable punishment, right? If you behaved a fool at Anthrocon and got drunk and interacted with a person that you shouldn't have, then, saying, hey, I'm going to not be going to Anthrocon next year is sort of a punishment for this, because even if Anthrocon doesn't announce, or if that happens, and obviously, do that, make that. And by the way, if you make that decision before Anthrocon has to make that decision, it sort of shows that you're trying to make things easier on your friends, because you probably have some friends in the staff. You have some people in the staff that are like, are kind of like, oh gosh, should we do it? Should we do it? Do we have to do it? Do we have to do it? We're going to put our friendships at risk. I'm going to have to worry about it. If you understand that if you're putting your friends in that position where they have to kind of make this decision between, do I lose a friend or do I lose my ethics, right? You should probably take action yourself and say, like, because of my behavior at Anthrocon, I am self-suspending for a year, right? And then basically you put the punishment on yourself. If Anthrocon wants to do more, let them do it. But it does two things. Number one, it shows that you're actually you're actually putting a punishment on yourself for your behavior that you're allegedly sorry for, instead of just saying sorry and hoping the whole thing blows over by next year, right? You're like, because I think that's the big reason, and that's the big thing that kind of saved me from like going down a darker hole, is that, like, it took me 24 hours and that random tweet from that person that I looked up to, from a distance, to basically go like, I need to put this in the bud right now. I'm in the wrong. According to everyone else, I'm in the wrong. And even to myself, this is not the way I should have went about it. If everybody's reacting this way, then I screwed up, because if I'm supposed to be good with words, if I'm supposed to be good with what I'm doing, they should not have gotten to that point of that frustration. So I'm going to write a thing saying, here are the steps that I'm going to take, right? And here's what I'm going to do. Here's the punishment I'm putting on myself. Here's the expectations I'm putting on myself to prevent what happened here from happening again. And I think I've done a decent job at that so far. So, but I mean, if I make future mistakes can happen, but when a mistake happens, you learn from them. And the only way you learn from them is that you punish yourself without punishing yourself by drinking out of a bottle, because that's not a punishment. That's escapism. Like, do work that you really don't want to do, but you should have done, right? Like reading an ethics book. It's like, I should have done that before going into this, but apparently I didn't, so I should do that. And it's something I should do anyway. So I'm going to do that. But anyways, liquor is an escape. Drugs is like, if you have fun drinking, punishing yourself by drinking is not punishment. You might think it's punishment because you hate yourself afterwards, but hating yourself is not going to make you better. It's just going to make you hate yourself. It's not what we want. We want you to be better. That's what we want. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching today. I think that's enough rambling and ranting about that. And as I said, and I guess the final thing I'll say is there are people, to the people who out there are dealing with alcoholism and things like that. I hope that you get through it, that you seek the care that you need. I know there are people out there who are doing, trying to get out of it every day, particularly in the furry fandom, because, as I kind of jokingly expressed earlier, the world's a tough place, and sometimes, we joke about hiding to the bottle to get it out of your system, but sometimes, we need people here in the room as well to deal with these problems that we are in. And I hope that you recover from it. And I hope that, Dre, I hope that, as I said, too, recovers from it if he's still out there. I hope that, PepperCoyote recovers from it. I know that I think there are other furries out there who I think many people know have problems with it, that are also trying to do that. But they weren't caught having little fisticuffs with people or little drunken tirades against furry comedians out near the river. But they've held it a lot better. But I always hope to see people improve, and being linked to the sauce can definitely, in time, become more hindrance than it is fun. Have a good one, everyone.